Hi everyone and welcome back to the videos. I hope you had a great time modeling the arm and everything else. So let's get started on modeling a hand. This will be the hand video. So the easy way to model a hand, and I hate to use the word easy, but this is, okay, let's say the most acceptable way to model a hand is that we have to try and fit it to the arm, right? So when I'm looking at this arm here, I'm going to count the amount of polygons that this arm has, and I'm looking 1, 2, 3, 4. That's the connection point of the arm to the hand. So we need to make a hand that can connect at, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 vertexes, right? So what I need to do is make an eight-sided polygon or use a box that has eight vertexes at the very top that we can use. And that's exactly what I'm going to do. So I'm going to make a box right here. And I'm going to make sure that it has, let's say, eight vertexes at the top. And right now we're at, 1, 2, 3, 4 vertexes. So what I need to do is create a separation here. Whoops, let's say 2, and then 2. So by doing this and taking away that, I'll create a box that's 2 by 2 by 2. So this is a hand. It may not look like a hand right now, but it will be. Because we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 vertexes all along the edges of the box at this top, and that's the same amount of vertexes we have for the hand, that means we can weld them together. That means it'll be easy to weld together. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to scale this down to fit for the size of my hand. Now the hand, not the fingers, the actual hand itself. So I'm going to adjust it in the position of the actual hand itself. Just like that. So this is technically my hand. If I go to my front view, I look at it, this is my hand. And I can even thin it out a bit more. I'm going to change my rotation axis right here from view to local so that I can squish the box from this view. And I'll switch it back to view and just adjust it in a place like this. So this will be my hand. So right now, I'm going to give it a skin material. I'm going to go to my M for material, find my skin, and I'll assign it to this box here. And now it also has a skin material on it as well, so I can work from it maybe a little bit better. I go in my side view and I scale the hand for how thick I want my hand to be. And I'm thinking about that would be fine. And don't worry, these two objects are completely separated, right? So anything you do to the hand is not going to affect your body. So don't panic and be like, it's going to mess up my body, it's going to mess up my body. You don't have to, there's nothing going on with this body currently that you're going to break because everything is detached, right? So you never have to panic, and if you mess up on the hand, don't worry. Just take your time and try and figure it out, right? So what you want to do mainly is look up a hand reference, right? Just look up hand on Google, literally, and look how a hand looks. You'll be surprised how many people forget how a hand looks. And if we look at it, the thumb sticks out here. We got the four fingers that stick out here, and they stick out pretty much like as far, just a little bit further than the thumb is. So I'm just going to keep a reference of a hand open on my other screen. And maybe you want to keep a reference something like this. Because we're working in a side view, this is actually a good view for the hand. This is how the hand should look almost in our front view there. So I'm kind of looking at this hand and I'm seeing that, okay, the thumb is extruded from the actual hand itself, almost on the inside of the palm, and the four fingers stick out the front. So that's how I'm going to build it out. That's how it's going to work. So I'm going to go to my front view here and I'm going to start building the palm out of my hand. So basically, your palm, the bottom of it, is a lot thicker than the top part of your hand, which slides into fingers. I'm going to right click on this model, convert to edit poly, and I'm going to start playing around with the vertexes. Now, obviously, play around your vertexes for how much you think it changes on your hand. But for me, maybe something like this. I'll keep it a little bit separated from the main hand. This is where my fingers will be extruded from. So my fingers will pop out of this front part of the model right here. And this will be where the palm starts connecting in. So I'll do something like this. So what we have is like a little bit of a block, right? My fingers will come out of here, great. But I need some place for my thumb to come out of. Now my thumb can come out of this part, that's not an issue, or this part here. But we need to make sure it looks like a palm. So I'm going to bring these vertexes back a little bit. I'm going to bring it back like that. And I'm looking at my own hand. I'm kind of comparing it. We kind of squeeze this in a bit on this side. And I'll squeeze it like all the way in here as well. And this is something we can tweak as we go. So yeah, I mean, don't panic about it too much right now. But I'm kind of just making sure I build out the basic shape of this palm and kind of building it out so I can extrude the thumb from this part of the actual hand itself here. And I'm going to move this down a little bit like here. Maybe move this down here like that. So what I get is a polygon here that I can extrude from and create the actual thumb itself. And this part will flow into the fingers right there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull these vertexes back slightly. Like this. And like this. And then I'll push these forward just slightly. Like that. And what I get is this kind of little area where the thumb's kind of pushed in a bit, which seems to work great for now. And then we can just extrude out a thumb. Now we can extrude out doing the rotation method we did for the shoulder, right? And just do like, I scale it in slightly. I do a little rotation like this. And you can see like we're already forming the base part of the thumb here. And I'm scaling it down quite a bit. And then I extrude once, extrude twice. And I extrude a third time right there. And now I got, you know, my basic type thumb shape. And if you want to try, you can turn this all into one smoothing group, of course. So I'm going to clear all smoothing groups, assign this all to number 1. And I can see that. And you can also add your mesh smooth or turbo smooth to figure out what your model is going to look like with turbo smooth or mesh smooth on. And I put on a turbo smooth modifier, and I see that the hand actually looks pretty good already. And the reason why I did that, the way I did it with the box and then I put turbo smooth on, is because you can see it smooths it out quite nice. And with turbo smooth or mesh smooth on, I can grab these vertexes when it's in low poly mode, you know, turn the vial on, and then do my adjustments as I see fit to make sure that it looks good. Now, if there are certain parts of your model that don't look good, then this is an easy way to adjust them, right? Don't forget our scale tools. We can scale local or by view. I'm going to scale by local here and do some adjustments to make sure my thumb is a lot thicker, like this. You can play around with the vertexes as well. You know, my thumb is a little thin, so I might give it some thickness here. Thicker like that. And now I got a decent looking thumb that's popping out there. I rotate around it to see how my thumb looks. It looks pretty good. And now I want to extrude the fingers out, right? So I know, trust me when I say that you're going to have to do this step a few times, because really all it is I created a box, right? I played around with the vertexes to create almost like a palm to my hand, and I extruded out the thumb here once, twice, and 3 times to get the basic shape of the thumb. That's definitely something that has to be practiced a little bit over and over again. So don't be ashamed if you just messed up the first time. You're like, oh no, I just messed up. Do it again. It doesn't take long, and you can. And the more you practice, the better you get at it. Trust me. So like really, don't panic. A lot of a lot of what people do at first is they start losing their minds and start freaking out over the fact that they can't make a thumb. Don't panic. Just keep trying. You'll be able to do it pretty easily. Trust me. Especially after like 6 or 7 or 1 million tries, like I've done, you'll be able to do it. So the next step afterwards, after we created our thumb and it looks good, it's the proper size. You know, in box mode, it's just a box, but once we add the turbo smooth or mesh smooth, it looks very rounded and very nice. We have to create 4 fingers. Now we have room enough for 2 fingers right now. If you look at our polygon count, and I'm going to Alt W here so you can see a little bit better, I have room for 1 and 2 fingers. Well, obviously that's not enough, right? So we need to create a separation point and cut into our model a bit to create space for more fingers. The way I do that is I actually go select my entire hand with polygon mode, and I'm going to create cuts in my model. So I'm going to go to polygon cut, and I'm going to cut from here, down here, across the finger, and back here. And then I do the same process for the other part. Cut, cut, left click, left click, left click, left click, and cut. And I'm going to test it out with Turbo Smooth, see how it looks. It still looks pretty good. It's still smooth all around. And then I notice that now, with Turbo Smooth off, I have 1, 2, 3, and 4. I have spaces for 4 fingers. I can, scale scale them out a bit if I need more room for these fingers to look more square-like. You know, your hand is actually pretty big, and right there. And I think that this is a pretty good size. And I'm gonna do some palm adjustments. I always like go back and do a billion different palm adjustments, so don't worry if you gotta adjust your palm a few times. Trust me when I say it's one of the most important part of the bodies that people spend the most time on a 3D model. So just go back and do a lot of adjustments to it until it looks correct to you. That's the most important part. So I take my time and I size out my fingers. I make sure, you know, they're all pretty much the same size. Everything's going to look pretty big, and then I adjust my vertexes, and then I start my extrusion process. Now wait, before you start the extrusion process, what's going to happen is if we extrude these, we're going to have one vertex space, like one edge that's connecting between fingers. And if we smooth them out, your fingers aren't going to really look that great. I mean, chances are, like, watch if I do, I'll do just like stick extrusions here like this, and then I put on Turbo Smooth. You see the connecting point between all the fingers is so small and so slim that it doesn't look that great. What we need to do is create separations now for these edges here. So what I normally end up doing is I end up either looping another cut, or I start chamfering those edges. So what I do is I just grab these two edges, I do chamfer. Oh, it looks like I grabbed more edges than I thought. 1, 2. I go to chamfer, like here. I change the size of my chamfer, like that. And okay. So what chamfer does is it separates one edge into two edges. You'll also notice, though, that it also created more of these vertex points up here and on the other side right there. We're going to need to do some adjustments with these vertex points. What I'm going to end up doing is I'm actually going to pull these vertex points a little higher up, like that. And I'm actually going to cut from the other side of the model, the other vertex here, to match this point, and to match this point. Then I'm going to test out with Turbo Smooth how it looks. And you can see we get like a knuckle effect. We got like some knuckles there. And on the other side, you can see it's a little bit more distorted. That's because we have to cut the other side too. So if I unhide this, and I move these vertexes, because they're really close, they're not looking smooth. So I'm going to move them up a bit like that. About there. And then I go to Polygon Cut. I'm just basically making sure the edges flow into somewhere else. Now, this isn't the perfect flow in the world. We end up with 2 triangles, 2 polygons. But for the purpose of fingers like this, it's not really too much of a worry, because once we Turbo Smooth, we end up with a nice polygon flow using the Turbo Smooth. Because we're building a low poly base, and we're building out another low poly model. So the second iteration of low polys from this. Because you can see, even with Turbo Smooth on and off, it's only adding 400 polys to get a really nice smooth hand. And by the end of it, if it's only at like 500 to 1,000 polygons for a hand, that's not an issue at all. That's what we want. So now that we have this space in between the fingers, we can scale it a little bit, so the space isn't so big. And we should do the same thing for the middle one here. So don't forget the middle finger. Chamfer this one as well. I'm going to chamfer. Like that. Polygon. And then I'm going to bring this vertex up here. So we're just worked on the outer 2 fingers first, and then we work on the middle finger. So we go to the middle finger here. And the funny thing, and what you can notice now, is that we can actually build a full polygon out of this. Because so if we use the cut tool right here, polygon, and I go to cut mode, and I cut from this vertex to this vertex to this vertex, we actually built a full polygon. These are 2 triangles that make a full polygon right there. Same here. So we actually made it look smoother already by adding those that new cut with the middle vertex. So that's what I'm going to change here on this other side too. I go around, and now with my new vertex point right here, I pull that up to try and match where the other 2 are. And you can always work in your front or side views as well. I go to my side view here, I can kind of just line it up completely here. Make sure everything lines up on the side here as close as possible. I go back in my perspective mode, and now I do my polygon cut. I'll just adjust this vertex just slightly here. I go to my polygon cut tool, polygon, and I scroll down to cut. And I cut from here to here, here. We get a nice looking palm 2 that actually looks pretty good. Circles around here. It creates those knuckles that we want and the space in between the fingers. And now we can finally do our finger extrusion, right? So we got the nice flow going on. We got a couple of triangles, but we're not going to worry too much about that because the Turbo Smooth will take care of it, and Turbo Smooth will definitely be on our model. There's no question about it. I grab all 4 of these fingers, and I can extrude all 4 at once. 1, 2, 3, and 4. Just a tiny little one. And this is so that when Turbo Smooth hits, we actually get the end of our fingers that we can adjust. So I can grab these end of my fingers. I can go to Turbo Smooth mode and see what it looks like with our fingers scaled down like this. And you can see we get appropriate looking fingers. Now, don't leave your fingers like this. If you leave fingers that look like this, they kind of look weird. Remember that the middle finger is slightly longer, so do your adjustments to your middle finger. I'm going to go to polygon mode. Okay, this is a little tricky, so watch what I'm going to do. I'm going to go polygon mode, and I'm going to grab the end polygon. See, I'm going to grab this little bitty polygon at the end here. I'm going to use soft selection. Now, the problem with soft selection is when you use soft selection, look at this, right? Grabs the entire hand. So soft selection here, turn it on, grabs like more than it should on the hand. That's when you use something called edge distance. What edge distance does is it grabs only the polygons flowing along, only the edges flowing along that the edge you have selected. So I selected this polygon, which has these 4 edges. So the edge distance actually only flows to the edges across them there first before going to anything else. So now you see edge distance off, edge distance on. It's not bad, right? So now I go to my front view, and I know my middle finger has to be slightly longer than my other fingers, and I rotate it a little slightly, and I know that it kind of pulled it a little bit too, which is great. And then I go to my pinky, and I know that the pinky will have to be slightly shorter than everything else, so I go to either my front or my left view or my right view, whichever view works best for you, and I make that shorter, and I go to my front view to make sure that it's kind of lined up correctly, rotated correctly. And I just do some slight rotations to my model. I might rotate this entire hand here for a second, like this, to give it a more natural look. So I just do some slight rotations. With soft selection, either turned on or off. And sometimes you can just turn it off and just rotate the fingers completely, like I'm doing right now. I turn soft selection off. I'm actually just rotating the entire selection of fingers so that they appear more natural. I grab these 2 polygons so I can pull this back slightly. And you can do your adjustments however you see fit to that model so that it looks more naturally laid out. And you can see now we have 4 fingers and a thumb. And of course, you can always add more detail like fingernails and stuff like that. So for instance, if I wanted to add a quick fingernail, this is just me testing out right now, but I would just do an extrusions, just extrusions and insets. So I do an inset. Like that. And then obviously there's lots of changes that need to be done to it, but we can add a new cut, a new inset, that kind of stuff to add more detail to the fingers. But for at this moment, just basically modeling the basic hand that we're about to attach, this works pretty well. And don't forget that you can thicken up this detail too. My character's fingers are really dainty and thin, so it's not too much to change on this that I can alter right now without adding the texture detail, fingernails, that kind of stuff, since our fingers are really, really, really thin. I'm just going to kind of leave it like this at the moment, and then we can alter that at a later point to really add a lot more detail. So the next step, now that you have your hand complete, what we want to do is hold Alt W here. I'm going to go to my hand, and I'm going to turn off Delete Turbo Smooth. I'm going to delete Turbo Smooth completely. I'm going to go to my main model, and I'm going to turn off Turbo Smooth so I can see what it looks like. And I'm going to delete the polygons that are supposed to connect the hand, the actual mesh itself, right? So I delete these polygons here. And then I attach the hand. So in editable polygon mode, I go to attach, which should be under edit geometry right here, attach, hand. I delete the polygons on the top part of the hand. And then I can do what's called edit poly vertex, and I go to this ribbon menu here. So this menu right here, and I find vertices and I find target weld. It looks like a little target board. What target weld does, when it's blue, it means it's active. When you left click on one vertex and then left click on another vertex, it welds them together, but the first vertex will always fly to the second vertex that you select. So for instance, if I click here and click on this vertex here, you can see that they're flying the wrist. So I'm going to keep going. I'm going to rotate around my model, make sure everything's flying to the correct location. And then now that if I have that done, if I turn on my mesh smooth or turbo smooth or whatever have you, you can see now we have a mesh with a hand. We did a full body. Like if we pretty much got a full body done. So that's what I'd like to see where you're at right now, is get this full body done. And the next video, we'll talk about creating the chest or the breast, whatever you'd like to create. And that will come up by Friday. But by Friday, I'd like to see that you get the full body done. If you have your own custom character, that's great. Go for it. But I want to see the legs done, the hip done, the lower torso, the upper torso, the arm, and the hand, and the slight neck done, so that we can begin on the adding the breast detail this week, and then finishing off this whole body. Talk a little bit about unwrapping, and then get to the head detail and get to how we can add more detail to our model to add, like, for instance, this part here, we might need more of a pelvis look to it, that kind of stuff. So take this into further detail. But if I unhide my other part of my model right now, you can see that we have a nice body, nice two sides there, and everything's looking pretty darn good, I must say. So be sure to save your file. If you run into any issues, let me know. And by Friday, by tomorrow, hopefully, like I said, there's no assignment this week. I'm just going to be constantly uploading videos so that you can keep up to date. And next week is when we start our assignment. So I'll be uploading as much as I can this week to get everything done. And then next week, we'll do the build your own character or fully organic with clothing and stuff like that. So good luck so far. Look forward to the next video, which we'll talk about adding a little bit more detail to our character, adding breasts, finishing up the neck, and then hopefully we can get on to the head a little bit more in detail and push out from there. Take care.